Clara Bennett stared at her phone screen, watching the little checkmark turn blue. The voice message. The one where she'd spent 3 full minutes roasting her billionaire boss, Adrian Vale, calling him devastatingly handsome but emotionally constipated, walking arrogance in a $10,000 suit, and the kind of man who probably alphabetizes his feelings, had just been delivered. Not to her best friend Sarah, to the company-wide chat, 500 employees, including Adrian himself. Her hands went numb. In exactly 4 minutes, her entire life was about to implode in the most spectacular, humiliating way possible. And honestly, she kind of deserved it. Before we dive into this absolute disaster of a love story, smash that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this mess travels. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. The fluorescent lights in Vale Industries' accounting department flickered the way they always did at 7:47 a.m., which Clara had come to think of as the universe's way of saying, your life is barely holding together, but hey, at least you showed up. She sat at her desk, 3rd row from the window, 2nd computer from the left, the one with the sticky end key that made every email feel like a small battle, and tried to pretend she hadn't just committed career suicide. Her phone sat face down on the desk. She couldn't look at it. Wouldn't look at it. If she didn't look, maybe it hadn't really happened. Maybe the last 3 minutes had been some kind of stress-induced hallucination brought on by too much instant coffee and not enough sleep. Clara? She jumped hard enough that her knees slammed into the underside of her desk. Pain shot up her thigh. Perfect. Actual physical pain to accompany the emotional devastation. Her coworker Janet stood there, eyes wide, phone in hand. Did you just... No. Clara's voice came out strangled. Whatever you're about to say, the answer is no. It didn't happen. We're in an alternate timeline. This is a simulation. I'm actually still in bed, and this is a really, really detailed nightmare. You called Adrian Vale emotionally constipated. Nope. In a voice message. Not ringing any bells. To the entire company. Clara dropped her head onto her desk with a thunk that definitely gave her a minor concussion. Oh, God. You also said he has the emotional range of a very expensive refrigerator. I need to die now. Right now. Is there a medical condition where you can just will yourself to stop existing? Because I'm trying really hard and it's not working. Janet pulled up a chair, her voice dropping to a whisper, even though half the office was already staring. Clara, listen to me. You need to run. Grab your stuff, fake a family emergency, maybe fake your own death. I'm serious. Adrian Vale doesn't forgive. Last year, Marcus from IT made a joke about his coffee order in the break room and got transferred to the warehouse in Nebraska. Nebraska, Clara. The man doesn't mess around. Clara lifted her head just enough to see her phone light up. Notification after notification. The company chat was exploding. Michael Chen, Priya Sharma. I cannot believe this is happening. David Kim, R.I.P. Clara, you were too young and too funny. Rachel Morrison, alphabetizes his feelings. I'm screaming. This is it, Clara whispered. This is how I die, not in some dramatic, meaningful way, but because I can't work my phone's basic functions before I've had caffeine. She'd been trying to send the message to Sarah, her best friend since college, the one person who understood that sometimes you needed to verbally destroy your boss to maintain your sanity. They had a sacred ritual. Every Sunday night, they'd exchange voice messages listing everything insane that had happened that week. It was therapeutic, it was private, or it was supposed to be. Clara replayed the moment in her head with the kind of crystal clarity that only comes when you've ruined your life. She'd been walking to the break room, phone in hand, still half asleep. She'd pulled up her messages, hit record, and just unleashed. Sarah, oh my God, you should have seen him yesterday in the quarterly meeting. Adrian Vale, in all his 6'2", perfectly tailored jaw that could cut glass glory, actually had the audacity to tell marketing that their emotional appeals weren't data-driven enough. The man runs a tech company like it's a military operation. Everything is metrics and projections and 5-year plans. I swear he probably has a spreadsheet for his feelings, if he has feelings, which is debatable. You know what? He's like a really expensive refrigerator. Sleek, impressive, keeps everything cold, including his personality. But here's the thing, and I hate that I'm saying this, he's also unfairly criminally handsome. Like, it should be illegal to be that attractive and that emotionally unavailable. It's false advertising. God gave him that face and that body, and then just forgot to install the software that makes you human. And don't even get me started on how he looks at people when they're talking, like he's running calculations. Is this person worth my time? Let me check my internal algorithm. I bet he alphabetizes his feelings. A for annoyance, B for boredom, C for contempt. Oh, we spend a lot of time in C. The man is impossible. Impossible. But also, ugh, why does he have to look like that when he's being impossible? Don't. She'd been so busy ranting that she hadn't noticed she was clicking on the company-wide chat. Hadn't noticed she was pressing send on a voice message that would nuke her career from orbit. Clara, Janet's voice pulled her back to the present horror. Your phone. Clara looked down. New message from Adrian Vale's executive assistant, Margaret. Mr. Vale would like to see you in his office. Immediately. Oh no. Go. Janet pushed her chair back. Better to get it over with. Maybe he'll be merciful. Maybe he'll just fire you instead of, destroying your entire professional reputation and making sure you never work in this city again. You're really bad at pep talks. I know. I'm sorry. I'm panicking for you. Clara stood on shaking legs. Her skirt, the one she'd bought from a thrift store 3 months ago, the one with the small stain near the hem that she'd strategically hidden with a safety pin, suddenly felt ridiculous. Her blouse, which had seemed professional enough this morning, now looked cheap and wrinkled. She was about to walk into Adrian Vale's office looking like exactly what she was, a broke, struggling woman who just made the worst mistake of her life. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt like a death march. 42 seconds of pure, concentrated dread. The doors opened onto a completely different world. Marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows, art that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Everything whisper quiet and intimidating. Margaret sat at her desk, silver hair perfectly styled, expression unreadable. She'd been Adrian's assistant for 15 years and had the kind of calm, terrifying competence that came from managing a man who ran a multi-billion-dollar company before he turned 33. Miss Bennett. Her voice was neutral, professionally, devastatingly neutral. He's waiting. Margaret, I'd save the explanations for Mr. Vale. Right. Of course. Clara's heels clicked too loudly on the marble as she walked toward the massive double doors. She'd never been up here before, never had any reason to be. She was accounting. Level 3. Invisible. Forgettable. At least she used to be. She knocked, barely. A pathetic little tap that she immediately regretted. Come in. His voice carried through the door. Deep, controlled. The voice of a man who'd never lost his composure in his entire life. Clara pushed the door open and stepped into what felt like a minimalist temple to success. The office was enormous, probably bigger than her entire apartment. One wall was completely glass, overlooking the city. The furniture was that kind of expensive where everything looked simple but probably cost a fortune. Clean lines, no clutter, no personality. And there, behind a desk that looked like a sculpture, sat Adrian Vale. He didn't look up immediately. He was reading something on his computer, one hand on his mouse, the other resting on the desk. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him so perfectly it had to be custom. His dark hair was styled just enough to look effortless. His jaw was exactly as sharp as she'd described in her rant. Clara stood there, drowning in silence, watching him read. Was this a power move? Was he making her wait on purpose? Or was he genuinely busy and she was just... Sit. She jumped. Yes, sitting. I'm sitting now. She practically fell into the chair across from his desk. It was lower than his. Of course it was. Everything about this office was designed to remind you who had the power. Adrian finally looked up, and Clara's stomach dropped into her shoes. She'd seen him before, obviously. From a distance. In meetings where he was at the front and she was somewhere in the anonymous middle. But up close, with his full attention on her, it was different. His eyes were dark gray, almost silver in the morning light. They were analytical, sharp. The kind of eyes that saw right through bullshit and polite lies. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. Clara's heart hammered so hard she was sure he could hear it. So, he finally said. Emotionally constipated. Clara wanted to melt into the floor. Mr. Vale, I am so... And the emotional range of a very expensive refrigerator. I can explain. Can you? He tilted his head slightly. I'm curious how you explain accidentally sending a 3-minute roast of your boss to 500 employees. It was meant for my friend. The words tumbled out too fast. I was half asleep, I wasn't paying attention, I clicked the wrong chat, and I know that's not an excuse, but it's the truth, and I'm so sorry. It was unprofessional and inappropriate, and I completely understand if you want to fire me right now. I'll pack my desk, I'll leave quietly, I won't cause any trouble. He watched her spiral with that same unreadable expression. Then, shockingly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but something. You think I alphabetize my feelings. Clara closed her eyes. I was venting. I didn't mean... Well, I meant it, but I didn't mean for you to hear it. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Honesty meant for private consumption versus honesty that accidentally goes public are two very different levels of career-ending stupidity. This time he definitely almost smiled. Almost. You're not fired. Clara's eyes snapped open. I'm not? No. Why not? Adrian stood, walking around his desk with the kind of controlled grace that came from someone who was always aware of how much space he took up. He leaned against the front of the desk, arms crossed, looking down at her. Because your assessment, while crude and delivered in the worst possible way, wasn't entirely inaccurate. Clara blinked. I'm sorry, what? I am data-driven. I do run this company with precision, and I'm aware that my leadership style can come across as... He paused, searching for the word, cold. I called you a refrigerator. A very expensive one. I'm choosing to take that as a compliment to my taste. Was he joking? Clara genuinely couldn't tell. His expression was still controlled, but there was something in his eyes now. Amusement? Curiosity? However, he continued, there's the matter of what to do with you. Her brief relief evaporated. What do you mean? You've created quite a situation, Miss Bennett. By noon, every employee in this building will have heard your voice message. Many already have. Some are treating you like a folk hero. Others think you're reckless and unprofessional. Either way, you've disrupted the workplace culture. I really am sorry. He held up a hand, cutting her off. I don't want apologies, I want solutions. You've put me in an interesting position. If I fire you, I look petty and vindictive. If I ignore it, I look weak. So I need a third option. Clara's mind raced. A third option? You're going to work with me directly, starting tomorrow. The words didn't make sense. They were English. She understood each one individually, but together they formed a sentence that defied all logic. I'm sorry, what? You'll be reassigned, temporarily, to my office. You'll assist with various projects, reports, whatever I need. Consider it a probationary period where I can keep an eye on you. That's... Clara struggled to form words. That's not punishment. That's a promotion. Is it? His eyes held hers. Working directly with someone you clearly can't stand? Someone you think is emotionally unavailable and impossible to deal with? Spending 8 to 10 hours a day in close proximity to a man you compared to a refrigerator? I think you'll find it quite punishing. Oh, that was clever. That was diabolical. You want to torture me with your presence. I want to see if your honesty extends beyond voice messages. You said I'm impossible to deal with. Let's test that theory. If you can last 30 days working directly with me without quitting or committing another career-ending stupidity, as you put it, we'll consider the matter resolved. You'll return to accounting with a nice addition to your resume. If you can't, he shrugged, then perhaps you'll realize that some of that impossibility is on your end. Clara stared at him. This was insane. This was a trap. This was, do I have a choice? Everyone has a choice, Miss Bennett. But your options are limited. Work with me, or start job hunting. I hear Nebraska has openings. The Nebraska reference. He'd heard about Marcus. Of course he had. Adrian Vale knew everything that happened in his company. Clara's pride warred with her survival instinct. She needed this job. Her apartment, her student loans, her entire barely functioning life depended on this paycheck. She couldn't afford to job hunt, couldn't afford to be unemployed. But spending 30 days in close quarters with Adrian Vale, the man she'd just publicly humiliated, the man who was currently looking at her like she was a particularly interesting problem to solve. Fine, she heard herself say. 30 days. I can handle 30 days. Can you? That almost smile again. We'll see. Margaret will send you the details. You start tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. He turned back to his computer, a clear dismissal. Clara stood on shaky legs, headed for the door. Miss Bennet? She turned back. Yes? For what it's worth, the alphabetizes his feelings line was creative. A for annoyance, C for contempt. You weren't far off. Then he actually smiled. Small, controlled, but real. Clara fled. The rest of the day was a blur of stares, whispered conversations, and messages from coworkers she barely knew. By lunch, #RefrigeratorGate was trending internally. Someone had made a meme. Several someones, actually. Clara sat in the break room eating a sandwich she'd brought from home, peanut butter and day-old bread because that's what her budget allowed, and tried to process what had just happened. You're alive, Sarah's voice crackled through her earbuds. She'd called the moment Clara texted her the news. Barely. And you're not fired. No. Worse. I'm being transferred to work directly with him. 30 days of close-quarter psychological warfare. Sarah laughed. It was not a sympathetic laugh. Oh my God. Clara, this is either the worst thing that's ever happened to you or the beginning of a really weird rom-com. It's not funny. It's hilarious. You roasted your billionaire boss and now you have to be his personal assistant? That's comedy gold. I'm not his assistant. I'm his... I don't even know what I am. His punishment project? His entertainment? Or, Sarah's voice took on that tone, the one that meant she was about to say something Clara didn't want to hear. He's interested. Absolutely not. Think about it. He could have fired you, should have fired you, but instead he's pulling you into his orbit? That's not normal boss behavior. He's punishing me. Maybe. Or maybe you're the first person in years who's been honest with him, and he doesn't know how to handle it. Clara thought about the way he'd looked at her, the almost smile, the comment about her creativity. You're reading too much into this, she said firmly. The man is a billionaire CEO with a daughter and probably a complicated personal life I know nothing about. I'm a broke accountant who just committed career suicide and got a temporary stay of execution. There's no story here. If you say so, Sarah said, not believing her for a second. But for the record, I think the next 30 days are going to be very interesting. Why? That night, Clara lay in her tiny apartment. Studio, technically, though calling it a studio was generous, and stared at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, most supportive, some jealous, a few warning her to be careful. She thought about Adrian Vale's office, the space, the view, the expensive simplicity of it all. She thought about the way he'd studied her, like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. Mostly, she thought about how thoroughly she'd screwed up her quiet, invisible life. Tomorrow, she'd walk into that office and face 30 days of whatever mind game he was playing. 30 days of close proximity to a man who unsettled her in ways she didn't want to examine too closely. She'd survive. She had to. Because the alternative, unemployment, eviction, failure, wasn't an option. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something much bigger and more complicated than a simple punishment detail. And somewhere across the city, in a penthouse she couldn't even imagine, Adrian Vale sat in his home office, replaying a 3-minute voice message for the 4th time, and for the first time in years, he smiled at something that wasn't a quarterly earnings report. Clara arrived at 7:55 a.m. the next morning, determined not to give Adrian any ammunition. She'd worn her best outfit, which was still from a thrift store but at least didn't have any visible stains, and had practiced her professional, unbothered expression in the bathroom mirror. Margaret greeted her with a stack of files and a schedule that made Clara's head spin. Mr. Vale has meetings until 11, she explained, but he wants you to review these quarterly reports and compile a summary of discrepancies. He'll expect your findings when he's free. Clara took the files. They were heavy, very heavy. This is typically a week's worth of work, she said slowly. Mr. Vale works quickly. He'll expect you to do the same. Great. Fantastic. Off to a wonderful start. Clara sat up at a small desk outside Adrian's office, not in the main space with Margaret, but close enough to his door that she'd hear when he returned. The reports were dense, financial projections mixed with market analysis, the kind of thing that required intense focus. She dove in, grateful for the distraction. At 11:07, Adrian's office door opened. She hadn't even heard him come back. "Miss Bennett." She looked up. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled his sleeves to his elbows. It should have made him look more casual. Instead, it made him look more intimidating, less CEO, more focused and intense. "Yes, Mr. Vale?" "My office. Bring your summary." Clara gathered her notes. She'd barely finished half the reports and followed him inside. He sat behind his desk, waiting. She sat across from him, acutely aware of how this mirrored yesterday's disaster. "I found 3 major discrepancies so far," she began, keeping her voice professional. "The Southeast regional projections don't account for the new tariffs. The marketing budget has a recurring decimal error that's been compounding for 6 months, and whoever input the Q2 data for the German office transposed 2 numbers in the revenue column." Adrian leaned forward, interested. "You found all that in 3 hours?" "It's what I did. In accounting, I'm good with numbers." Clearly. He pulled up something on his computer, typing quickly. "The German office error has been there for 2 quarters. 4 different people reviewed those reports, and no one caught it. It's easy to miss if you're not looking for patterns. The transposition created a number that was plausible, just wrong." He looked at her with something new in his expression. "Respect? Maybe. Continue with the reports. I want a full summary by end of day." "That's—" Clara bit back her protest. "Yes, Mr. Vale." "And Miss Bennett?" "Yes?" "You can call me Adrian. We're going to be working closely. Might as well drop some of the formality." Her brain short-circuited a little. Are you sure that's appropriate?" "Probably not. But then again, you've already called me a refrigerator to the entire company. I think we're past traditional workplace boundaries." "Was that humor? Actual humor?" "Right," Clara managed. "Adrian, then." His name felt strange in her mouth. Too personal, too intimate. "One more thing," he said as she stood to leave. "I heard you eat lunch at your desk. Don't. Take a proper break. There's an executive dining room on this floor. You have access now." Clara thought about her peanut butter sandwiches, her tight budget, the prices in executive dining rooms. "I usually bring my own. Meals are covered for employees working directly with me. It's company policy." It absolutely was not company policy. He was making this up to avoid the awkwardness of telling her he'd noticed her pathetic lunches. Something twisted in Clara's chest. Not quite gratitude, not quite resentment, something complicated and uncomfortable. "Thank you," she said quietly. He nodded, already turning back to his screen. Clara spent the rest of the day buried in numbers, finding errors, compiling data. At 1 p.m., she forced herself to the executive dining room, where everything was fresh and expensive and nothing had a price tag. She ate slowly, savoring food she'd never be able to afford on her own. At 6 p.m., she delivered her full summary. Adrian read through it in silence, his expression unreadable. "This is excellent work," he finally said. "Thank you. You found 9 errors that made it through multiple review levels. Do you know what that tells me? That your review process needs work?" He almost smiled. "That you're wasted in general accounting. This level of attention to detail, this analytical speed, you should be in a senior position." Clara felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. Recognition. The feeling of being seen. "I don't have an MBA," she said carefully. "I have a bachelor's degree from a state school, and student loans I'll be paying off until I'm 50. I'm not executive material." "Says who?" "Says the hiring practices of every major company in this city." Adrian leaned back in his chair, studying her with that intense focus that made her want to squirm. "Tell me something, Clara. Why did you really apply to Vale Industries?" The use of her first name startled her, made this feel less like a work conversation and more like something else. "I needed a job," she said honestly. "I was 2 months behind on rent and 1 week away from having my electricity shut off. You were hiring. I was desperate. It wasn't some grand career plan. And now? Now I'm still desperate, just employed desperate instead of unemployed desperate. That's not what I meant." He stood, walking to the window, hands in his pockets. You're smart, talented. You've been here 18 months and no one noticed because you've kept your head down, stayed invisible. Why? Clara's defenses went up. Because invisible means safe. Safe means I keep my job. Keeping my job means I survive. Survive. He turned back to her. Is that really all you want? To just survive? The question hit harder than it should have. Because yes, that's all she'd wanted for so long. Survival had been the goal. Keep the lights on, keep food in the fridge, keep existing. It's all I can afford to want, she said quietly. Something flickered in Adrian's eyes. Understanding? Sympathy? Day 1 complete, he said instead. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. We have a board meeting. You'll sit in, take notes. I've never been to a board meeting. Good, fresh perspective. See you tomorrow, Clara. She left feeling off balance, like the ground had shifted beneath her feet, and she was still trying to find her footing. The rest of the week followed a brutal pattern. Early mornings, intense work, Adrian pushing her harder than anyone ever had. But he also listened to her ideas, valued her input, gave her access to meetings and decisions far above her pay grade. He was demanding, exacting. He expected perfection and didn't tolerate excuses. But he wasn't cold. Not really. He was focused, driven. And underneath all that control, Clara started to see glimpses of something else. Like when she'd worked through lunch 3 days running and he'd had Margaret order her food. Not asked, just made sure she ate. Or when she'd mentioned having to take the bus because her car died and he'd arranged for a company car service. Temporary, he'd said, while you're on this assignment. But the look in his eyes said he knew exactly what her financial situation was and was too proud to accept help. By Friday, Clara was exhausted, exhilarated, and completely confused about what was happening. She was packing up for the day when Adrian appeared at her desk. Good work this week, he said. Thanks. You're not as impossible to work with as I thought. The corner of his mouth twitched. High praise. Don't let it go to your head. You're still top-tier difficult. And you're still brutally honest. It's my best and worst quality. They stood there, an awkward pause stretching between them. Clara became acutely aware that they were alone. Margaret had left 20 minutes ago. The floor was empty. Can I ask you something? Clara heard herself say. You're going to anyway. Why didn't you fire me? Really? Not the answer about workplace politics and third options, the real reason. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his expression guarded. Because, he finally said, everyone in my life tells me what I want to hear. They manage me. Polish their words, present carefully curated versions of the truth. You called me a refrigerator and meant every word. That kind of honesty is rare and valuable. Even when it's insulting? Especially when it's insulting. Honest criticism is a gift. Most people are too afraid to give it. Clara thought about that. About what it must be like to be Adrian Vale, powerful, wealthy, surrounded by people who needed things from him. Never sure who was real and who was performing. That sounds lonely, she said quietly. His eyes met hers, and for just a second his guard dropped. She saw something raw there. Tired. Human. It is, he admitted. Then the guard went back up. Have a good weekend, Clara. You too. She left, but the image of that brief vulnerability stayed with her. The weekend passed slowly. Clara caught up on sleep, did laundry, tried to process the week. Sarah called, demanding details. So, how was week 1 of corporate punishment? Weird, Clara said. He's not what I expected. Meaning? Meaning he's still demanding and intense and probably does alphabetize his feelings. But he's also fair, and he actually listens. And sometimes he's almost funny. Oh no. What? You like him? I do not. Clara, I can hear it in your voice. You like him. I respect him professionally. That's different. Sure it is. And when you start showing up early just to see him and finding excuses to stay late and thinking about him on weekends, that'll also be professional respect. You're ridiculous. I'm right. But be careful, okay? He's your boss. He's a billionaire. You're in completely different worlds. That kind of thing doesn't end well. There's no thing, Clara insisted. It's a work assignment. 23 more days and I go back to accounting and never think about him again. Sarah laughed. If you actually believe that, you're lying to yourself. After they hung up, Clara sat in her tiny apartment and tried very hard not to think about Adrian Vale. She failed spectacularly. Monday morning, Clara walked into the office to find everything changed. There was a new desk in Adrian's office, set up perpendicular to his, creating an L shape. He was already there, working, coffee in hand. "Morning," he said without looking up. "There's a desk in your office." Observant. "My desk. In your office." The outside space wasn't practical. "This is more efficient." Clara stared at the setup, at how close the desks were, at how they'd be working side by side all day, every day. "This is very close quarters," she said carefully. "Problem?" "Yes, because being near him for short bursts was manageable. But all day? Every day?" "No," she lied. "No problem." "Good. We have a vendor meeting in 20 minutes. You'll need to review these contracts first." He slid a stack of papers across to her new desk. Clara sat, trying to ignore how aware she was of his presence. The subtle scent of his cologne, the sound of his typing, the way he occasionally ran his hand through his hair when he was concentrating. This was going to be a very long 23 days. The vendor meeting was intense. Adrian negotiated like he did everything else, precisely, strategically, never showing his hand. Clara took notes, but mostly she watched him work, watched how he read people, how he knew exactly when to push and when to pull back. "You're staring," he murmured during a break in the discussion. Clara jerked her attention back to her notes. "I'm observing. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Professional development. I'm learning from you." He didn't sound convinced. After the meeting, back in the office, Adrian pulled up a document on his screen. "Your contract," he said. "I've been reviewing it." Clara's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "You're underpaid significantly." What?" "Your salary is 15% below market rate for your education and experience. Has been since you were hired." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I needed the job. I took what was offered. And no one bothered to correct it after you proved your value." He typed something. "I'm adjusting it. Retroactive to your start date. You'll see the difference in next week's paycheck." "You can't just—" "I can. I'm the CEO. Watch me." "Adrian." He looked at her, really looked at her, and Clara forgot what she was going to say. "You're worth more than you've been paid," he said quietly, "and it's my job to fix that." Something in Clara's chest cracked open. Not gratitude, though there was that. Something deeper. The feeling of being valued, of mattering. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and turned back to his work, but Clara saw the slight tension in his shoulders, the way he'd deliberately put distance between them again. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds typing and pages turning. It should have been awkward. Instead, it felt almost comfortable. "Can I ask you something personal?" Clara said, breaking the quiet. "You're going to anyway." She smiled. "You have a daughter, right?" "I've heard people mention her." Adrian's entire demeanor shifted, softened. "Emma, she's 6. What's she like?" "Stubborn, smart, too smart sometimes. She asks questions I don't know how to answer and has opinions on everything." His voice held genuine warmth, love. "She's the best thing I've ever done." "Her mom?" The warmth evaporated. "Not in the picture. It's just Emma and me." Clara heard the finality in his tone, the door slamming shut on that topic. "She's lucky to have you," Clara said. "I'm lucky to have her." He paused. "She keeps me human. Reminds me there's more to life than board meetings and profit margins." "Does she know you alphabetize your feelings?" He actually laughed. Full, genuine laughter that transformed his whole face. "She'd probably agree with you. Last week she told me I think too much and feel too little." "Smart kid." "Terrifyingly smart. I'm in trouble when she's a teenager." They shared a smile, and for a moment the walls were completely down. No CEO and employee. Just two people, connecting. Then Adrian's phone buzzed. The moment broke. "I have a call," he said, voice professional again. "Take an early lunch." Clara gathered her things, but as she left, she glanced back. Adrian was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Want? Regret? something complicated and carefully controlled. She turned away before she could analyze it too much. But she was starting to understand what Sarah had meant. This wasn't just a punishment detail anymore. This was something else entirely. And they both knew it. 2 weeks in, Claire had learned several important things about Adrian Vale. 1. He took his coffee black, no sugar, and got irritable around 3 p.m. if he hadn't eaten lunch. 2. He had exactly 3 expressions for displeasure: the raised eyebrow for minor annoyances, the jaw clench for serious problems, and complete stillness for when he was genuinely angry. 3. He touched his watch when he was thinking about his daughter. Always his watch, a simple silver piece that looked out of place among his expensive suits. And 4. He was watching her just as carefully as she was watching him. She caught him at it sometimes. A glance that lasted half a second too long. The way his attention tracked her movements across the office. How he'd pause mid-sentence when she laughed at something on her phone. It was a Tuesday afternoon when things shifted again. Clara was deep in a financial model, trying to reconcile projections that made no sense, when Adrian's desk phone rang. She barely registered it until his voice went tight. "When?" A pause. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket. His face had gone carefully blank, but Clara saw the tension in his shoulders. "Emma's school called. She's sick. I need to—" He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. For the first time since she'd known him, Adrian looked genuinely rattled. "Reschedule my 4 o'clock, and the dinner meeting tonight. Margaret's already left for the day, so you'll need to—" "Go," Clara said firmly. "I'll handle it. Give me your calendar access and I'll move everything. You don't have to—" "Adrian, your kid is sick. Go be her dad. I've got this." He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then he nodded once, sent her a calendar link from his phone, and left. Clara spent the next hour rearranging meetings, sending apologies, handling the small crisis of Adrian's sudden absence. She was good at this, she realized. The juggling, the problem-solving, the diplomatic emails to annoyed executives. At 6 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for today. Emma's fine. Just a stomach bug. But she was scared and wanted me there." Then, after a pause, another message. "I don't usually leave early, or ever, really. You made it easy." Clara stared at the messages, something warm spreading through her chest. She typed back before she could overthink it. That's what good teams do. How's she feeling? Currently watching cartoons and milking the sympathy for all it's worth. She's figured out that sick days mean unlimited screen time. Smart kid. Told you. Too smart. She just asked why I'm smiling at my phone. Claire's heart did something complicated. What did you tell her? The typing indicator appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, that a friend said something funny. A friend. Clara turned that word over in her mind. Were they friends? Could a boss and employee be friends? Should they be? Get some rest, she typed back. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. And Clara? Really, thank you. She went home that night thinking about Adrian in dad mode. Softer, worried, human in ways the office never got to see. She wondered what he looked like reading bedtime stories, making breakfast, braiding a 6-year-old's hair. Then she forcibly stopped wondering because that way led to thoughts she had no business thinking. The next morning, Adrian was back to his usual controlled self, but there was a coffee waiting on Clara's desk when she arrived. Her exact order, vanilla latte, extra shot, oat milk, that she'd never actually told him. You've been buying the same thing from the lobby cafe every morning for 3 weeks, he said without looking up from his computer. I pay attention. Apparently. Clara took a sip. It was perfect. How's Emma? Back to full energy and demanding pancakes for breakfast. Crisis averted. Good. Clara sat at her desk, trying to ignore how the coffee felt like more than just coffee. So, what's the disaster of the day? Seattle? The merger deal is falling apart. Clara's head snapped up. The tech acquisition? The one worth $200 million? Bunt. Their CEO is getting cold feet. Wants to renegotiate terms we agreed on 3 months ago. I have a video call with him in an hour, and I need leverage. What kind of leverage? Adrian pulled up a file, spinning his monitor so she could see. Find me something. Anything. A gap in their strategy, a weakness in their projections, Something I can use to show them why they need this deal more than we do. Clara dove into the documents, her mind already racing through numbers and patterns. This was what she was good at, seeing the story behind the data, finding the threads that didn't quite connect. 45 minutes later, she found it. Their Q3 projections are inflated, she said, excitement making her words tumble out fast. Look, they're banking on a product launch that's already been delayed twice. If it gets pushed again, they miss their revenue targets by 30%. They need your capital injection to cover the gap. Adrian leaned over to see her screen, close enough that Clara could feel the heat of him, smell that subtle cologne that she'd started recognizing instantly. How did you catch that? Cross-reference their public statements with supplier contracts. The delays aren't public yet, but they're there if you know where to look. He was quiet for a moment, studying the data, then studying her. You're wasted in accounting, he said again, but this time it sounded different. Less observation, more regret. So you keep saying, I mean it, Clara, this kind of analysis, you should be heading a department, leading strategy sessions. I don't have the pedigree for that. You have the brain for it. That should matter more. In theory, sure. In practice, the corporate world runs on credentials and connections. I have neither. Adrian's jaw tightened, the serious problem clench. Then the corporate world is broken. Probably, but I still have to live in it. The video call went exactly as Adrian planned. He presented Clara's findings with surgical precision, cornered the Seattle CEO with his own inflated promises, and had him agreeing to original terms within 30 minutes. When it ended, Adrian leaned back in his chair, something like satisfaction crossing his face. We make a good team, he said. We really do. Clara surprised herself by meaning it. The days started blurring together after that. Long hours, intense work, but also laughter. Actual laughter. Adrian had a dry wit that caught her off guard, sharp observations delivered with perfect deadpan timing. And Clara gave as good as she got, her unfiltered honesty becoming something he actively sought out. Tell me what you really think of this proposal, he'd say. And she would. No polish, no corporate speak. Just truth. It was dangerous, how comfortable they were becoming. You know what your problem is? Clara said one afternoon, reviewing a speech he was supposed to give at a charity gala. I'm sure you're about to tell me. You sound like a robot wrote this. We are pleased to contribute to this worthy cause. Nobody talks like that. It's a formal event. It's a children's hospital fundraiser. Talk like a human. Better yet, talk like a dad. You have a 6-year-old. Use that. Adrian frowned at the speech. I don't bring Emma into work things. Why not? She's part of your life. Probably the best part from what I can tell. Because the moment I do, she becomes a commodity. A photo op. A way for people to seem relatable to me. Clara heard the bitterness there, the old wounds. Or, she said gently, she becomes the reason people connect with you, not as a CEO, but as a person who understands why this cause matters. He was quiet for a long time, rereading the speech. Then he started typing, deleting the corporate language, replacing it with something real. When he finished, he turned the screen toward her. Better? Clara read it. It was beautiful. Genuine. It mentioned Emma, not by name, but the fear of a parent when their child is sick, the gratitude for doctors who care, the drive to make sure other families had access to the care they needed. Much better, she said, her throat tight. That's the real you. The real me is terrified of public speaking. Everybody's terrified of something. What are you terrified of? The question caught her off guard. Clara looked at him, at those sharp gray eyes that saw too much, and decided on honesty. Staying invisible forever, waking up at 50 and realizing I survived but never actually lived. Something shifted in Adrian's expression. Understanding, recognition. You won't, he said quietly. Stay invisible, I mean. You're too bright for that. The moment stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them was saying. Clara's heart hammered. Adrian's gaze dropped to her mouth for just a fraction of a second. Then his phone rang, and they both jumped like guilty teenagers. Vale, he answered, voice automatically professional. Then his face changed. When? I see. No, I'll handle it. Thank you for letting me know. He ended the call and sat back, suddenly looking exhausted. Problem? Clara asked. Seattle trip. The CEO wants to meet in person before signing the final contracts. Won't do it over video. When? This weekend. Saturday morning meeting, which means flying out Friday night. That's... Clara did the math. That's 2 days from now. Yes, and Margaret just texted. She has the flu, can't travel. Clara saw where this was going before he said it. You need someone to go with you. I need someone who understands the deal inside and out. Someone who can think on their feet. Someone who won't let the CEO's games throw them. He met her eyes. I need you. Clara's brain immediately threw up a dozen red flags. Business trip, hotel, weekend, with Adrian. This was a spectacularly bad idea. Okay, she heard herself say. Okay? It's a $200 million deal. Of course I'll go. When's the flight? 6 p.m. Friday. We'll be back Sunday afternoon. 2 nights. In Seattle. With Adrian Vale. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, as it turned out. Friday came too fast. Clara packed her one professional suitcase, thrifted, slightly battered, and tried not to think about the fact that she was about to spend a weekend in close quarters with her boss. Her impossibly attractive, increasingly complicated boss. Sarah called while Clara was stress packing. You're going where? Seattle. It's a business trip. Perfectly normal. Nothing about this is normal. You're going on a romantic weekend getaway with a billionaire. It's a business meeting. That requires you to stay overnight? For 2 nights? Clara, come on. The meeting is Saturday morning. It makes sense to fly in Friday. And Sunday? We have a follow-up meeting. A follow-up meeting? Is that what we're calling it now? I hate you. No, you don't, but seriously, be careful. I know you're falling for him. I'm not. You are. And maybe he's falling for you too. But he's your boss. He's a billionaire single dad with a complicated life. You're in completely different worlds. This isn't a fairy tale. Clara sat on her bed, suitcase half packed, and felt the truth of Sarah's words settle into her bones. I know, she said quietly. I know it can't go anywhere. I'm just getting through the 30 days. Then it goes back to normal. Will it, though? Clara didn't have an answer for that. The flight was smooth, but Clara's nerves were shot. She sat next to Adrian in first class, a world she'd never experienced, where the seats were practically beds and the flight attendants knew him by name. He worked most of the flight, laptop open, reading contracts. Clara tried to work too, but found herself watching him instead. He'd loosened his tie, rolled his sleeves up. Without the armor of his office and his title, he looked different. Still handsome, God was he handsome, but also tired. Human. You're staring again, he said without looking up. I'm analyzing. There's a difference. Is there? I'm trying to figure you out. That got his attention. He closed his laptop, turned to face her. What have you concluded? That you use work as a shield. Bury yourself in deals and meetings so you don't have to think about what you're missing. His expression went carefully neutral. And what am I missing? A life. Friends. Someone who makes you laugh. You have Emma, and she's everything to you, but you're so busy protecting her that you've forgotten how to protect yourself. I don't need protecting. Everyone needs protecting. Clara held his gaze. Even billionaire CEOs with control issues. I don't have control issues. Adrian, you color code your daughter's schedule. That's efficient parenting. That's control issues. He almost smiled. Almost. Maybe you're right. I usually am. This time he did smile, small but real, and Clara felt that dangerous warmth spread through her chest again. Tell me something, Adrian said. Something real. Not work, not the office. Just you. Clara thought about deflecting, keeping it light, but his eyes held genuine curiosity, genuine interest, and she found herself wanting to be honest. I used to want to be a writer, she said. In college. I had this whole plan. Move to New York, work at a magazine, write the great American novel by 30. What happened? Reality. Student loans. Rent. Turns out nobody pays writers enough to live on, and I had bills that wouldn't wait for my artistic dreams to pan out. So I got practical. Accounting degree, stable job, survival mode. She looked out the window at the clouds. Sometimes I still write. Late at night when I can't sleep. Nothing good. Just words. I'd like to read them sometime. Claire's heart stumbled. They're not, they're just, I bet they're better than you think. He paused. You sell yourself short, Clara. I've noticed. Every time someone compliments your work, you deflect, minimize. Why? Because accepting it feels dangerous. Like if I let myself believe I'm actually good at something, the universe will find a way to prove me wrong. That's not how the universe works, isn't it? Every time I've reached for something better, it's fallen apart. Safer to keep expectations low. Adrian was quiet for a moment, studying her with that intense focus that made her feel transparent. You know what I think? He finally said. I think you're scared of being seen, really seen. Because if people see how talented you are, you'll have to stop hiding, and hiding feels safer. Clara's breath caught. That's not fair. It's honest. You value honesty, remember? I hate when you use my own words against me. Get used to it. They landed in Seattle just after 8 p.m. local time. The hotel was downtown, expensive, sleek. Adrian checked them in while Clara tried not to gawk at the marble lobby and the chandelier that probably cost more than her yearly salary. We have adjoining rooms, Adrian said, handing her a keycard, in case we need to work tonight. Adjoining rooms, with a door between them. Clara's brain immediately went places it shouldn't. Makes sense, she managed. Efficient. Exactly. They rode the elevator to the 15th floor in silence. Clara was acutely aware of the small space, the proximity, the way Adrian's sleeve brushed against hers. Her room was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a bed that looked like a cloud, bathroom bigger than her entire apartment's bedroom. She unpacked slowly, trying to process the surreal turn her life had taken. 3 weeks ago, she was invisible. Now she was in Seattle, in a luxury hotel, preparing for a meeting that could make or break a massive deal. A knock on the adjoining door made her jump. Clara opened it to find Adrian standing there, tie gone, jacket off, looking unfairly good in just his dress shirt. Hungry? He asked. Starving. Room service or restaurant? The smart answer was restaurant. Public, safe, boundaries. Room service, Claire heard herself say. I'm exhausted. They ended up in Adrian's room because it had a sitting area. Clara ordered a burger. She was done pretending to have sophisticated taste, while Adrian got some kind of salmon thing that looked fancy and probably cost $40. They ate on the couch, going over the meeting strategy, but somewhere between the main course and dessert, the conversation drifted. Emma asked about you, Adrian said suddenly. Clara's fork paused halfway to her mouth. What? She wanted to know who I was texting. The night she was sick, I told her a friend from work. What did she say? She said I don't have friends from work, only employees. He smiled ruefully. 6 years old and already calling me out. She's not wrong, though, is she? No, I don't let people get close. It's easier that way. Easier than what? Than getting hurt. He set his plate aside, leaning back against the couch. Emma's mom left when she was 6 months old. Just left. Said she didn't sign up for motherhood, that I'd trapped her, that she had her whole life ahead of her and wasn't going to waste it raising a kid. Clara's heart cracked. Adrian, I came home from work one day and found Emma in her crib screaming. She'd been alone for hours. There was a note on the counter. She's your problem now. That was it. No explanation, no second thoughts, just gone. I'm so sorry. Don't be. I got Emma out of it. Best trade I've ever made. But his voice was rough. But it taught me something. Trust is expensive, and most people can't afford the price. Clara understood then. The walls, the control, the carefully maintained distance. He wasn't cold. He was protecting himself, protecting Emma. Not everyone leaves, she said quietly. No? In my experience, they do. When things get hard, when the reality doesn't match the fantasy, when staying requires sacrifice. He looked at her. People are selfish, Clara. They take what they want and leave when it's convenient. That's a pretty dark view of humanity. It's an honest one. There was that word again. Honest. The thing that kept pulling them together. What about Emma? Clara challenged. Is she selfish? She's 6. She's allowed to be. But she's not, is she? From what you've told me, she's thoughtful, caring, worried about you working too much. Where did she learn that if not from you? Adrian looked caught off guard. I don't know. Maybe people aren't as inherently terrible as you think. Maybe you've just been hurt enough to only see the worst. And you? What's your excuse for low expectations? Same as yours, different details. Clara pulled her knees up to her chest. My dad left when I was 8, just stopped coming home. No explanation, no goodbye. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat and died of a heart attack when I was 20. I've been on my own since then. Every relationship I've tried ended the same way. Guys who wanted something easy, fun, uncomplicated. The moment things got real, they bailed. I'm sorry. Don't be. Like you said, it taught me something. Count on yourself. Expect nothing. Survive. They sat in heavy silence, 2 wounded people recognizing each other's scars. We're kind of a mess, aren't we? Adrian said finally. Clara laughed, surprised. Yeah, we really are. Emma would like you, I think. The subject changed through her. You think? You're honest. Funny. You don't take my crap. She'd appreciate that. I'd like to meet her sometime. If you ever... not that you would, but I'd like that too. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Clara should leave. Should say goodnight, go back to her room, maintain professional distance. This was already too personal, too intimate. They were crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. I should go, she said, not moving. Probably, Adrian agreed, not moving either. Their eyes met. Held. Clara saw the exact moment his control started to slip, saw want flash across his face before he locked it down. Clara. His voice was rough, a warning. I know. She stood, forced herself toward the adjoining door. Good night, Adrian. Wait. She turned back. He was standing now too, hands in his pockets, jaw tight with the effort of restraint. This weekend, he said carefully, after the meeting, we should talk about this, whatever this is. Claire's heart pounded. Okay. She made it back to her room, closed the door, leaned against it. Her whole body was shaking. This was happening. Something was definitely happening, and she had no idea if it was the best or worst decision of her life. Probably both. Clara didn't sleep. She lay in that too-soft hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of Adrian moving around in the next room. Water running, the creak of furniture. At one point, she heard him on the phone, his voice low, probably talking to Emma before bed. The tenderness in his tone made Claire's chest ache. At 2 a.m., she gave up on sleep and pulled out her laptop. If she couldn't rest, she might as well work. She reviewed the Seattle CEO's financials again, looking for anything they might have missed, any last-minute leverage. That's when she found it. Buried in a subsidiary report, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, the Seattle company had another offer. A competing bid from a European firm, slightly lower than Vail Industries' offer, but with fewer conditions. The meeting tomorrow wasn't just a formality, it was an auction. Clara's stomach dropped. Adrian didn't know. If he walked into that room unprepared. She was knocking on the adjoining door before she'd fully thought it through. Adrian opened it immediately, like he'd been awake too. He'd changed into pajama pants and a t-shirt, his hair messy from running his hands through it. He looked younger like this, more vulnerable. Clara? What's wrong? We have a problem. She pushed past him into the room, laptop open. Look at this. They have another offer. We're not the only player. Adrian took the laptop, his eyes scanning quickly. His jaw went tight. Where did you find this? Cross-reference their subsidiary filings. It's hidden, but it's there. The meeting tomorrow. They're going to play us against each other. Drive the price up or force better terms. That son of a... Adrian cut himself off, setting the laptop down. He paced to the window, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Okay, we can work with this. How? If they have leverage, then we make them think they don't. He turned back to her, and Clara saw the strategist emerge. We know something they don't think we know. That's an advantage. We go in confident, hold our ground, make them believe we're the only real option. What if they call our bluff? Then we walk. The deal isn't worth overpaying for. Clara moved to stand beside him at the window. The city glittered below them, beautiful and indifferent. You'd really walk away from 200 million? I'd walk away from anything that costs more than it's worth. He glanced at her. That's the secret no one tells you about business. Knowing when to fold is more important than knowing when to push. And in life, do you walk away there too? The question hung between them. Adrian's expression shifted, becoming guarded. Depends what we're talking about. Clara's heart hammered. They were dancing around it again, this thing neither of them was brave enough to name. Adrian, we should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. There it was, the retreat, the wall going back up. Clara felt something inside her snap. Frustration, exhaustion, all the feelings she'd been suppressing for weeks bubbling over. You do this, she said, voice sharper than intended. Every time we get close to something real, you shut down, pull back, hide behind work or professionalism or whatever excuse feels safest. Clara, no. You wanted honesty? Here's honesty. You're terrified. Of this, of me, of whatever might happen if you actually let someone in. And I get it, I do. You've been hurt, but you can't live your whole life protected from everything. You think I don't know that? His voice rose to match hers. You think I don't see exactly what I'm doing? I know I'm a mess, Clara. I know I'm emotionally unavailable and controlling and every other thing you said in that voice message. But there's a reason for that. There's a reason I keep people at a distance. Because one person left you? Because Emma's mom was selfish and cruel? That's not a reason, Adrian. That's an excuse. It's not just her. He was really angry now, color rising in his face. Everyone leaves. My parents wrote me off when I dropped out of Harvard to start my company. Said I was throwing my life away. My business partner embezzled funds and disappeared. The woman I thought I'd spend my life with abandoned our daughter without a second thought. So forgive me if I'm not eager to hand someone else a loaded gun and wait for them to pull the trigger. I'm not them. How do I know that? The question came out raw, desperate. How do I know you won't wake up one day and realize this, whatever this is, isn't worth the complications? That I'm too damaged, too difficult, too much work? Clara's anger evaporated, replaced by something softer. She moved closer to him, close enough to see the fear in his eyes. You don't know, she said quietly. That's what trust is. Taking the risk without guarantees, believing in someone even when your past tells you not to. I don't know how to do that anymore. Yes, you do. You do it every day with Emma. You trust her. You believe in her. That's different. She's my daughter. Is it different? Or are you just more scared of adult relationships because they require vulnerability you can't control? Adrian looked at her for a long moment, something breaking in his expression. I don't want to hurt you, he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. Then don't. It's not that simple. It is, though. It really is. You're making it complicated because complicated feels safer. They stood there in the dim hotel room, the city lights casting shadows across Adrian's face. Claire could see him struggling, walls crumbling and rebuilding in real time. I can't promise you anything, he said. I can't promise this will work, or that I won't mess it up, or that my issues won't destroy everything. I'm not asking for promises, I'm asking for honesty, for you to stop running. Adrian reached up, his hand hovering near her face like he wanted to touch her but was afraid to. Clara closed the distance, leaning into his palm when it finally cupped her cheek. This is a terrible idea, he murmured. Probably the worst. You're technically still my employee. Technically. This could complicate everything. It already has. He kissed her. Or she kissed him. Clara wasn't sure who moved first, but suddenly his mouth was on hers and nothing else mattered. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was weeks of tension breaking, months of loneliness ending, two damaged people reaching for something real. Clara's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. Adrian's arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her slightly. She made a small sound against his mouth and felt him smile. Bedroom, he muttered against her lips. We should… Yes. They barely made it. Clara's back hit the wall near the bed and Adrian pressed against her, his kiss turning deeper, more desperate. His hand slid under her shirt, warm against her skin. Tell me to stop, he said, pulling back just enough to look at her. Tell me this is crazy, and we should be professional and… Clara kissed him again, harder. Don't stop. What happened next was messy and imperfect and absolutely nothing like the movies. They fumbled with buttons and knocked over a lamp and laughed breathlessly when Adrian couldn't figure out her bra clasp. It's been a while, he admitted, slightly sheepish. For me, too. How long? 2 years. You? 4. Clara pulled back to look at him. 4 years? I told you, I don't let people close. His hands slid up her sides, reverent. But you got close anyway. Snuck right past my defenses with your honesty and your terrible coffee addiction and that voice message that should have made me fire you. Best mistake I ever made. Same. They took their time after that, learning each other, exploring without rushing. Adrian was careful, attentive, his control slipping in the best ways. Clara had never felt so seen, so wanted. When he whispered her name like a prayer, something fundamental shifted in her chest. After they lay tangled in expensive sheets, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. Clara's head rested on Adrian's chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. We should talk about this, Adrian said finally. Do we have to? Right now? Probably not. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. But eventually we'll figure it out. For now, can we just be? I'm not good at just being. I noticed your brain is always 3 steps ahead, planning the next move. It's how I've survived. Clara propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. Maybe it's time to stop just surviving and start actually living. Adrian's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. You make it sound easy. It's not, but it's worth it. He pulled her down for a kiss, soft and slow. Stay tonight, please. I'm not going anywhere. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in years, Adrian didn't wake up alone. The morning brought reality crashing back. Clara woke to find Adrian already up, showered, half-dressed in his suit pants and dress shirt. He was on his phone, that familiar tension back in his shoulders. What's wrong? Clara sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest. The Seattle CEO moved the meeting up, 9 a.m. instead of 11. We have 45 minutes. What? Why? Power play. Wants to keep us off balance. Adrian's jaw was tight. Get ready. We need to be sharp for this. The night before might as well have been a dream. Adrian had slipped back into CEO mode, all business, no trace of the vulnerable man who'd held her in the dark. Clara showered quickly, put on her best professional outfit, tried to stuff down the hurt blooming in her chest. This was what she'd signed up for, right? Complications. A man who compartmentalized everything, including her. The meeting was brutal. The Seattle CEO, Richard Chen, 50-something and sharp as glass, played them exactly as Clara had predicted. He had the European offer on the table, literally, printed out and positioned where they couldn't miss it. I'm sure you understand, Richard said smoothly, that I have a responsibility to my shareholders to consider all options. Adrian didn't blink. Of course. Just as I have a responsibility to mine not to overpay for acquisitions. The European offer is quite generous. The European offer has a 2-year integration timeline. Ours is 6 months. Your board won't wait 2 years for returns. Richard smiled. You've done your homework. I always do. They went back and forth for 90 minutes. Clara took notes, provided data when Adrian needed it, watched him work with reluctant admiration. This was what he was built for, the strategy, the chess match, the controlled aggression of high-stakes negotiation. But she also saw the cost, the way his shoulders stayed rigid, the slight tension headache building at his temples, the way he touched his watch when Richard pushed particularly hard, thinking of Emma, grounding himself. Finally, at 10:47 a.m., Richard stood. I need to consult with my board. Can you give me until Monday? No, Adrian said simply. We fly back today. You have until 3 p.m. to decide. After that, the offer expires. Richard's eyes narrowed. That's aggressive. That's business. You have options, Mr. Chen. So do we. 3 p.m. They left the building in tense silence. Adrian's driver took them back to the hotel. Clara waited until they were alone in the elevator before speaking. That was risky, giving him a deadline. It was necessary. Show weakness, and he'll play us for weeks. And if he walks, then we walk. Adrian's voice was flat, professional. Like last night hadn't happened. Clara felt something crack inside her. Are we going to talk about it? About what? Don't do that. Don't pretend last night didn't happen. The elevator doors opened. Adrian stepped out, Clara following. Last night was... He stopped in the hallway, ran a hand through his hair. Last night was a mistake. The words hit like a physical blow. Clara actually stepped back. A mistake? Clara, no. Don't Clara me. Don't soften it. You said what you meant. Her voice was shaking now, anger and hurt tangling together. Last night I was worth the risk. This morning I'm a complication you need to manage. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, you got what you wanted, and now you're back to being the untouchable billionaire who doesn't need anyone. Adrian's face went hard. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? You told me you were terrified of being hurt. You made me believe you were trying, and the second things get real, the second we're back in the light of day, you fold, just like you said you would. So congratulations, Adrian. You were right. You are too damaged for this. She turned toward her room, fumbling with her keycard. I'm trying to protect you, Adrian said behind her. Clara spun back. From what? From you? I don't need protecting. I need honesty. I need you to decide what you actually want instead of running scared every time you feel something. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I have spent my entire adult life making myself small, invisible, safe. I settled for survival because wanting more felt dangerous. And then you pushed me. You told me I was worth more than I believed. You made me want things I'd given up on. And now you're telling me it was all a mistake? That I should just go back to my little box and pretend this never happened? That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying? Adrian looked at her and Clara saw genuine pain in his eyes. I'm saying I don't know how to do this. I'm saying every instinct I have is screaming at me to protect myself, protect Emma, protect you from the mess I know I'll make of this. I'm saying I want you so badly it terrifies me, and I have no idea how to reconcile that with everything I've built my life around. So you're choosing fear. I'm choosing what I know, what's safe. Safe is lonely, Adrian. Safe is that office you hide in and that penthouse you go home to and nights spent wondering if this is all there is. I know because I've been living it too, and I'm done. I'm done being afraid of wanting more. She got her door open, stepped inside. Clara, wait. 3 p.m., right? Your deadline. Let me know when Richard decides. She met his eyes one last time. And while you're waiting, maybe figure out what you're actually fighting for. Because from where I'm standing, you just gave up something real for the comfort of being alone. She closed the door before he could respond, before she could see if her words had landed, before she could break down completely. The next 4 hours were agony. Clara packed mechanically, checking her phone obsessively. At 2:47, Adrian texted. Richard accepted. Original terms, deal closes Monday. And then after a long pause, I'm sorry. Clara stared at those 2 words. Sorry for what? For last night? For this morning? For being exactly who he'd warned her he was? She didn't respond. The flight home was excruciating. They sat in first class again, but this time Adrian worked the entire flight, barely speaking to her. Professional, distant, every inch the CEO, and nothing like the man who'd held her in the dark. Clara pretended to work too, but mainly she stared out the window and tried not to cry. When they landed, Adrian's driver dropped her at her apartment first. Thank you for your work this weekend, Adrian said formally. Take tomorrow off. You've earned it. Clara looked at him, this beautiful, damaged man who'd rather be alone than risk being hurt. Goodbye, Adrian, she said quietly. Something flickered in his eyes. I'll see you Tuesday. Will you? She got out of the car before he could answer. Monday, Clara did not take the day off. She went to Vale Industries early, cleared out her temporary desk outside Adrian's office, packed up every trace of herself. Margaret watched with knowing eyes but didn't comment. You did excellent work, was all she said. He'll be lost without you. He'll be fine. He's always fine. Tuesday morning, Clara arrived at her old accounting desk to find an email waiting. From Adrian. Subject line, permanent reassignment. Her heart stopped. He was firing her. After everything, he was... She opened it. Due to your exceptional performance during the temporary assignment, I'm pleased to offer you a permanent position as Director of Strategic Analysis, reporting directly to the CFO. Significant salary increase, full benefits, office on the executive floor. Position starts immediately if you accept. Clara read it 3 times. It wasn't a love letter. It wasn't even an apology. It was a promotion, a way to keep her close while maintaining professional distance, a compromise that solved nothing and changed everything. She was drafting her acceptance because she wasn't stupid enough to turn down this opportunity when her phone buzzed. Sarah. Of course. How was Seattle? Don't ask. That bad? Worse. We slept together. He called it a mistake. I told him he was a coward. He's now offering me a promotion. I have no idea what I'm doing. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Do you love him? Clara stopped. Did she? Could you love someone after just a few weeks? Someone who pushed you away with one hand while pulling you close with the other? Yeah, she admitted. I think I do. Which is insane. Love usually is. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Clara looked at the email, at the offer that would change her life professionally while destroying her personally. I'm going to take the job, she said, and I'm going to move on. He made his choice. I need to make mine. And if he changes his mind, then he knows where to find me. She hit send on her acceptance before she could second guess it. The next 3 weeks were a special kind of torture. Clara moved into her new office, actual walls, actual windows, her name on the door. The work was challenging, engaging, exactly what she'd secretly dreamed of. She thrived. But she saw Adrian in the hallways, in meetings, in the elevator. Always professional, always distant. His eyes would catch hers sometimes, and she'd see something there. Regret? Longing? Before he looked away. Clara dated. Went out with a guy from marketing who was nice and funny and completely wrong. Tried to convince herself she was moving forward. She wasn't. Then came the merger gala. Black tie event, celebrating the Seattle acquisition, all of Vail Industries' biggest clients attending. Clara had to go. It was part of her job now. She wore a dress she couldn't afford, borrowed from Sarah, and tried to prepare herself for seeing Adrian in a tux looking like every romantic fantasy she'd ever had. She wasn't prepared enough. He was at the bar when she arrived, talking to a board member, and when he turned and saw her, he stopped mid-sentence. Just stopped. Stared. Clara felt that look in her bones. She made it through cocktail hour, through dinner, through speeches. But when the dancing started and she saw Adrian leading an elegant woman onto the floor, some board member's daughter probably, something inside her broke. She escaped to the terrace, the cool night air a relief after the stuffy ballroom. Running away? Clara spun. Adrian stood in the doorway, bow tie slightly loosened, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. I needed air. You look beautiful in there. I should have said that earlier. Don't. Her voice came out harder than intended. Don't give me compliments. Don't look at me like that. We're colleagues now. Professional. That's what you wanted. Is it? He moved closer. Because I'm starting to think I wanted the exact opposite and was too afraid to admit it. Claire's heart hammered. Adrian? I haven't slept in 3 weeks. Can't focus in meetings. Keep finding excuses to walk past your office just to see if you're there. Emma asked why I'm sad all the time. He stopped in front of her close enough that she could smell his cologne. I thought I was protecting myself. Turns out I was just being a coward. I already told you that. You were right. About everything. I was choosing fear over the possibility of something real. I was letting my past control my future, and I was too stupid to see what was right in front of me until it was gone. And what was that? You. Smart, honest, fearless you. The woman who called me a refrigerator and meant it. Who sees through all my walls and doesn't run. Who makes me want to be better than I am. Claire's breath caught. Adrian, I'm not good at this. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to panic and pull back and probably hurt you in ways I don't mean to, but I want to try. If you'll let me. If I haven't completely destroyed whatever chance we had. You hurt me. The words came out thick. You made me believe and then you took it away. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He reached for her hand, hesitant. I don't deserve another chance. But I'm asking anyway. Because the alternative, pretending I don't feel this, watching you move on with someone else, is worse than any fear I have. Clara looked at their joined hands, at the hope and terror in his eyes, at the man who'd rather be vulnerable than lose her. "One chance," she said finally. "You get one. And if you run again, I'm done. I won't wait around while you figure out if I'm worth the risk." "You are. You're worth everything." He kissed her there on the terrace, in full view of anyone who might look out, and Clara felt all the broken pieces inside her start to mend. They were going to be okay. Maybe. Possibly. Or they were going to be a beautiful disaster. Either way, Clara was done running, done hiding, done settling for survival. She was choosing to live, and that meant choosing Adrian, complicated and damaged and absolutely worth the fight. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Clara felt like the main character in her own story, and she wasn't invisible anymore. The kiss on the terrace should have been the beginning of their happy ending. It wasn't. They tried. For 6 weeks, they really tried. Adrian picked her up for coffee before work. They had lunch together when his schedule allowed. He texted her throughout the day, little things, observations, jokes that were dry enough to be his, but soft enough to show he was thinking of her. Clara started keeping a toothbrush at his penthouse. Adrian learned how she took her tea when she couldn't sleep. It was good. Almost perfect. Except for the parts where it wasn't. Adrian still flinched when Clara touched him unexpectedly in public. Still went radio silent when work got stressful. Still had moments where Clara could see him mentally calculating exit strategies, even in the middle of normal conversations. And Clara tried to be patient. She did. But patience was hard when you love someone who kept one foot out the door. "You're overthinking again," she said one night, lying in his bed while he sat at his desk, laptop open at midnight. "I'm working." "You're hiding." Adrian's jaw tightened, the serious problem clench. "I have a board meeting in the morning." "You've been prepared for that meeting since Tuesday. This isn't about work." Clara sat up, pulling the sheet with her. "What's going on in your head?" "Nothing." "Adrian." He closed the laptop with more force than necessary. "Fine. You want to know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking about how this ends. Because everything ends, Clara. And I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to see it coming or if it's going to blindside me like every other time." Clara felt like she'd been slapped. "We've been together 6 weeks and you're already planning our breakup? I'm being realistic. You're being terrified. There's a difference. Is there?" He stood, pacing to the window. The city glittered below, indifferent to their small drama. "You say you won't leave. Everyone says that. And then life gets complicated and suddenly, I'm not everyone." Clara's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "How many times do I have to prove that before you believe me?" "I don't know. Maybe never. Maybe I'm too broken for this." The words hung between them, ugly and honest. Clara got out of bed, started gathering her clothes. "What are you doing?" "Going home. You clearly need space to catastrophize in peace." "Clara." "No, don't. I love you. I have loved you since probably that first week in your office when you noticed I was underpaid and fixed it without being asked. But I can't keep fighting your demons and mine at the same time. If you want to convince yourself this won't work, I can't stop you. But I don't have to watch." She was dressed and at the door when Adrian caught her wrist. "Stay, please." "Why? So you can spend the rest of the night thinking about how I'm going to hurt you? That's not a relationship, Adrian. That's a hostage situation." His grip loosened but didn't let go. "I don't know how to fix this." "Maybe you can't. Maybe some things stay broken." Claire's eyes burned with unshed tears. "But you have to decide if you want to try anyway, or if you'd rather be right about everyone leaving." She pulled free and left. The Uber ride back to her apartment was a blur. Clara cried in the back seat while the driver pretended not to notice. This was supposed to be different. Adrian was supposed to be different. But fear was fear, and apparently love wasn't enough to overcome it. Her phone buzzed around 3 a.m. "I don't want to be right. I want to be brave enough for you. I'm sorry." Clara stared at the message. Sorry wasn't enough anymore. Sorry was just another way of saying, I acknowledge the problem, but I'm not going to change. She didn't reply. Work became complicated after that. They were professional in meetings, civil in the hallways, and absolutely avoiding being alone together. The office noticed. Margaret gave Clara sympathetic looks. The accounting department whispered. Clara threw herself into work. A major client was threatening to leave over a pricing dispute, and she spent 70-hour weeks building a retention strategy that addressed their concerns while protecting Vail Industries' margins. It was easier than thinking about Adrian, safer than wondering if love was supposed to hurt this much. 3 weeks of careful distance passed. Clara was surviving, barely, but surviving. Then she missed her period. At first, she didn't think much of it. Stress could do that. She'd missed periods before during finals in college, during her mother's illness, during the worst of her financial struggles. Bodies were weird. This was probably nothing, except her coffee started tasting wrong, and she was exhausted despite sleeping 8 hours. And the smell of the break room microwave made her want to vomit. Clara bought a pregnancy test on her lunch break, hands shaking as she paid. She took it in the executive bathroom, the fancy one with the marble counters and the fancy soap, because somehow that felt less real than her apartment. 2 lines, clear as day. Unmistakable. She was pregnant. Clara sat on the bathroom floor, test in hand, and tried to process what this meant. She was 30 years old, barely financially stable, in love with a man who was terrified of commitment, and now carrying his child. This was not the plan. This was never the plan. Her phone buzzed. Sarah. Hey, can I call you back? Are you okay? You sound weird. Clara laughed, slightly hysterical. Define okay. Clara. What's wrong? I'm pregnant. Silence. Then, oh wow. Does Adrian know? No, I just found out like 5 minutes ago, in a bathroom at work. Okay. First things first, how do you feel? Not about Adrian, about this. About being pregnant. Clara closed her eyes, let herself actually feel it. The terror, the wonder, the impossibility of it all. Scared, she admitted. But also, I don't know, not unhappy? Is that crazy? I'm 30, broke. My relationship is a disaster, and I'm considering having a baby. It's not crazy. Maybe a little impractical, but not crazy. Sarah's voice softened. What do you want to do? I want to keep it, I think. I mean, I know it's complicated and terrible timing and... Clara, breathe. Do you want to keep it? Yes. Then that's your answer. Everything else we figure out as we go. Clara pressed a hand to her still flat stomach. I have to tell him. Yeah, you do. He's going to panic. Probably, but that's his problem to solve, not yours. You tell him the truth and let him decide what kind of man he wants to be. Clara knew Sarah was right, but knowing and doing were very different things. She made it through the rest of the workday on autopilot. Went home, stared at the test, tried to figure out how to tell a man who was already terrified of abandonment that she was pregnant with his child. There was no good way. At 9 p.m., she texted Adrian, "We need to talk. Can I come over?" His response was immediate. Now? Yes. I'll send a car. 20 minutes later, Clara stood outside Adrian's penthouse, heart hammering. She'd been here dozens of times. It shouldn't feel different, but everything was different now. Adrian opened the door in jeans and a t-shirt, hair messy like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked worried. What's wrong? Are you okay? Clara walked past him into the apartment. Emma was asleep. It was late on a school night, so the space was quiet. Too quiet. I need to tell you something, and I need you to let me finish before you react. Adrian's face went carefully blank. Okay. I'm pregnant. She watched the words hit him, watched the color drain from his face, watched his expression cycle through shock, fear, calculation, and something that might have been panic. We were careful. Apparently not careful enough. I missed my period. Took a test today. It's positive. Adrian sat down heavily on the couch. How far along? I don't know exactly. 6 weeks, maybe? I haven't been to a doctor yet. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at nothing. Clara watched him process, saw the walls going up in real time. What do you want to do? He finally asked, voice eerily calm. I'm keeping it. I wanted you to know because you deserve to know, and because I hope you'll want to be involved. But if you don't, I'll understand. I can do this alone. Alone? He looked at her then, something breaking in his eyes. You think I'd let you do this alone? I think you've been looking for an exit since we started. This seems like a good one. That's not fair, isn't it? You can barely commit to dinner plans without having a minor panic attack. Now I'm asking you to commit to a child. Our child. For 18 years minimum. Claire's voice cracked. I love you, but I'm not going to trap you into something you don't want. Adrian stood, moved toward her. Clara, don't touch me. Not right now. I need you to be honest. Really honest. Can you do this? Can you be a father to this baby and a partner to me without running scared every time things get hard? I'm already a father. I know how to do that part. That's not what I asked. Adrian's hands clenched into fists at his sides. I don't know, okay? I don't know if I can be what you need. I'm barely holding it together as it is. My company is in the middle of 3 major acquisitions. Emma needs stability, and now you're telling me we're having a baby and you want guarantees I can't give. I'm not asking for guarantees. I'm asking if you're willing to try. What if trying isn't enough? What if I fail? What if I mess this up like I mess up everything else that matters? Clara felt tears spill over. Then at least you tried. At least you didn't run. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I grew up without a father. I watched my mother kill herself working to make up for his absence. I know exactly what it's like to be the kid whose parent chose fear over showing up. And I won't do that to our child. So you need to decide right now if you're in or out. Because I can handle being a single mother. What I can't handle is you being half in, half out, always looking for the door. Adrian looked at her with genuine anguish. I need time to think, to process. How much time? I don't know. That's not good enough. Clara grabbed her purse. You have until tomorrow. Decide if you want this, want us, or if you'd rather be alone and safe and miserable. But decide, because I'm done waiting for you to be ready. Please. Tomorrow, Adrian. I'll be at work. You know where to find me. She left before he could respond, before she could see if her ultimatum had worked or if she'd just pushed him away for good. The next day was torture. Clara went to work, sat through meetings, pretended everything was fine while her entire world hung in the balance. Adrian didn't call, didn't text, didn't appear. At 5 p.m., Margaret stopped by Clara's office. Mr. Vale asked me to give you this. She handed over a sealed envelope. Clara's hand shook as she opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with Adrian's handwriting. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'll make sure you and the baby are taken care of financially, but I can't be what you need. You deserve better than what I can give. I'm sorry. Clara read it 3 times. Then she very carefully folded it, put it back in the envelope, and set it on her desk. She'd known this might happen, had prepared herself for it, but preparation didn't make it hurt less. Margaret was still standing there, concern written across her face. Are you all right? No, but I will be. He's making a mistake. Clara laughed wetly. Yeah, he is, but it's his mistake to make. She finished her workday, went home, called Sarah. He said no. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Me too. Clara sat on her thrift store couch in her tiny apartment and let herself break. I really thought he'd choose us. I really believed he loved me enough to be brave. Maybe he does. Maybe he just doesn't love himself enough to believe he deserves it. That's not my problem to fix. No, it's not. So what now? Clara pressed a hand to her stomach where a tiny life was growing, a life that would be hers to protect, hers to love, hers to raise. Now I figure out how to do this alone. Doctor's appointments, maternity leave, childcare, a bigger apartment eventually. The logistics were overwhelming, but Clara had survived worse. I'll be okay. We'll be okay. You will, and I'll be here. Whatever you need. After they hung up, Clara pulled out her laptop. If she was doing this alone, she needed a plan, a budget, a timeline. The practical things that made impossible situations manageable. But first she opened a blank document and started writing. Not a plan, not a budget, just words, feelings. The story of how she fell in love with a man too scared to love her back. The words poured out, raw and honest and painful. It wasn't good writing. It wasn't meant to be. It was just therapy, cheap and available at midnight when everything hurt. She wrote about the voice message that started everything. About Adrian's almost smiles and careful walls. About Seattle and the terrace and the 6 weeks where she'd believed they had a chance. About the pregnancy test and the letter and the way it felt to be left behind. 3,000 words later, Clara felt marginally better. Not healed, but less broken. She saved the document as refrigerator stories because even heartbreak deserved a little dark humor. Then she went to bed and tried to sleep, knowing tomorrow would be harder. Tomorrow she'd have to face Adrian at work. Pretend she was fine. Hide the pregnancy until she figured out what to do about her job, her career, her future at a company run by the man who'd abandoned her. But tonight, she could just be sad. So she was. The next 3 weeks were a special kind of hell. Clara saw Adrian in meetings and said nothing, passed him in hallways and kept walking, received a notification that a substantial amount of money had been deposited in her account, his version of taking care of things, and considered returning it before deciding she wasn't proud enough to reject help her baby would need. She went to her first doctor's appointment alone, saw the heartbeat on the ultrasound and cried in the parking lot after, because Adrian should have been there and wasn't. She told HR she was pregnant and needed to understand her options for maternity leave. They were supportive and professional and asked if the father was involved. She said no and watched them carefully, not react. She started showing at 10 weeks. Just a small bump that she could hide with loose shirts, but there. Real. Undeniable. And through it all, she wrote. Every night she added to her story. It grew from therapy into something else, something that felt important. She wrote about power imbalances and second chances and men who couldn't get out of their own way. About women who chose themselves even when it hurt. Sarah read it at week 4. Clara, this is good, like really good. You should publish this. It's just journaling. It's a whole novel. 70,000 words of a whole novel. People would read this. People who want to read about my humiliation. People who want to read about a woman who refused to settle, who chose herself and her baby over a man who wasn't ready. That's powerful. Clara looked at the document, at the story she'd been bleeding onto the page for a month. I don't know. Think about it. At least let me send it to my friend who works in publishing. Sarah, just think about it. Clara thought about it, and the more she thought, the more it made sense. She had nothing to lose anymore. Adrian had already taken the worst things, her heart, her hope, her belief that love could be enough. Okay, she finally said, send it. 2 weeks later, Sarah's friend wanted to meet. The week after that, there was an offer, a real offer, with an advance that would cover a year of expenses and then some. Clara signed the contract in a daze. Her story, their story, was going to be a book. People were going to read about the voice message and the refrigerator comment and the Seattle trip and the pregnancy. And Adrian, brilliant strategic Adrian, wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. She should have felt guilty about that. She didn't. The book was scheduled to publish in 4 months. By then, Clara would be obviously pregnant, probably on maternity leave, and completely done with Vail Industries. She started planning her exit, quietly, carefully. She'd finish her major projects, train her replacement, leave on good terms. The advance plus her savings would cover her until she figured out what came next. Maybe freelance consulting, maybe more writing, maybe something entirely different. But not this. Not working for a company run by a man who'd chosen fear over her. At 16 weeks, Clara couldn't hide the pregnancy anymore. The loose shirts weren't working. People were noticing. She was in a meeting when it happened. Reaching for a report, her shirt pulled tight across her stomach. She saw Janet's eyes widen, saw the realization spread across her face. After the meeting, Janet cornered her. Clara, are you? Yes. Oh my God. Congratulations? Is it congratulations? Clara managed to smile. Yeah, it is. The father? Not in the picture. Janet hugged her impulsively. You're going to be amazing. If you need anything, thank you. But Clara knew what was coming. The whispers would start. People would count backward, figure out the timeline, remember that she and Adrian had been together. They'd put it together. She just hoped she was gone before it became a whole thing. At 17 weeks, Adrian requested a meeting. Clara almost said no, but she was still technically his employee, and refusing would cause problems she didn't need. She went to his office for the first time in months. It looked the same. He looked worse, thinner, tired, like he wasn't sleeping. Good, some petty part of her thought. You should suffer a little. Clara, thank you for coming. You're my boss. You requested a meeting. I came. What do you need? The formality made him flinch. I heard there are rumors about you being pregnant. Not rumors, facts. I'm 18 weeks along, due in January. Adrian's face went white. 18 weeks. That means, yes, it's yours. I wasn't sleeping with anyone else, if that's what you're wondering. I didn't think. He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. How are you? Are you okay? Is the baby okay? We're fine, regular checkups. Everything's progressing normally. Clara, is that all? I have a meeting in 10 minutes. No, that's not. He stood, moved around his desk. I've been thinking about everything, about what I said, what I did, and I was wrong. Clara felt anger flare hot in her chest. You were wrong. Yes. I was scared and stupid, and I hurt you when I should have been fighting for us. You think? Her voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. You think maybe abandoning your pregnant girlfriend was the wrong call? What gave it away, Adrian? The months of silence, the guilt money you deposited, the fact that I'm doing this completely alone? I know I messed up. You don't get to do this. You don't get to decide you made a mistake after I've already moved on. I gave you a chance. I gave you so many chances, and you chose to run, so now you have to live with that choice. I'm choosing differently now. Too late. I'm not interested anymore. Adrian looked stricken. You don't mean that. I absolutely mean that. You were right, Adrian. Everything does end. Us? We ended the day you sent that letter. What we have now is a co-parenting arrangement, nothing more. Clara, please. No. You lost the right to please me when you abandoned us. So here's how this works. I'll keep you informed about the pregnancy. You can be as involved as you want with the baby after it's born. But you and me, we're done. Professionally, I'm resigning in 6 weeks. Personally, we were over months ago. You can't resign. You're the best strategic analyst we have. Clara laughed bitterly. Watch me. I have other opportunities. Better ones that don't involve working for my baby's father who couldn't commit to being in our life. What opportunities? None of your business. She turned to leave. I love you. Adrian's voice cracked on the words. I know I have no right to say it. I know I proved the opposite with my actions. But I love you. I've loved you since you called me a refrigerator, and I've never stopped. Clara turned back, tears burning behind her eyes. Love isn't enough, Adrian. Love without bravery is just words. And I need more than words to raise a child. She left him standing there, and this time she didn't look back. Clara's last day at Vale Industries fell on a Friday in late November, exactly 6 weeks after she'd told Adrian she was done. The office threw her a small goodbye party in the conference room, cake from the grocery store, generic well wishes, a gift card to a baby store that made her throat tight with unexpected gratitude. Margaret hugged her at the end. You're making a mistake leaving. No, staying would be the mistake. He's miserable without you. Clara adjusted the bag on her shoulder, her belly now obvious at 23 weeks. That's not my problem to fix anymore. But it bothered her more than she wanted to admit. She'd seen Adrian twice in those 6 weeks, once in the elevator where they'd ridden 15 floors in excruciating silence, and once passing in the lobby where he'd looked at her stomach with such naked longing that Clara had to turn away. She was 7 months along now, waddling more than walking, exhausted all the time. Her apartment was filled with second-hand baby furniture Sarah had helped her assemble. She'd been to childbirth classes alone, practiced breathing techniques with YouTube videos, prepared herself mentally for single parenthood. The book was set to publish in 3 weeks. Clara had seen the cover, simple, elegant, with a title that made her smile. The Refrigerator Effect, a love story. Her editor loved it. Early reviews were strong. There was talk of a book tour, though Clara had to laugh at the idea of doing publicity 7 months pregnant. She went home that Friday and stood in her apartment looking at the life she'd built from scratch. It wasn't much, but it was hers, safe, honest, free from the emotional whiplash of loving someone who couldn't love her back. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Emma Vale. Please don't delete this. I need to talk to you about my dad. Clara's heart stopped. Emma. Adrian's daughter. She stared at the message, thumb hovering over the delete button. Another message came through. He's really sad, like all the time. And I heard him crying last night. Grown-ups don't cry unless something is really, really wrong. Then, he talks about you when he thinks I'm not listening, says your name in his sleep. Clara sat down heavily on her couch, hand over her mouth. I looked you up, found articles about you leaving Vale Industries, and I saw you're having a baby. Is it my dad's? This was wrong, so wrong. Emma was 6 years old. She shouldn't be texting her father's ex-girlfriend. Adrian would lose his mind if he knew. Claire should ignore this, delete it, stay in her safe bubble. Yes, she typed instead. It's your dad's. The response came fast. I knew it. You're going to be my baby's mom. That makes you kind of my stepmom too, right? It's more complicated than that, sweetie. Adults always say that when they don't want to explain. My dad loves you. I can tell. And you love him, or you wouldn't look so sad in your pictures. Clara laughed wetly. Smart kid. Too smart. Your dad and I had problems we couldn't fix. Sometimes love isn't enough. That's dumb. Love should always be enough. That's what love is for. Out of the mouths of children, Clara thought. When did 6-year-olds get so wise? How did you get my number? Clara asked, changing the subject. Dad's phone. He has you saved as Clara don't call. Clara don't call with a heart emoji, which is super sad, BTW. Clara's chest felt tight. Don't call with a heart. That summed up their entire relationship. Emma, you should delete these messages. Your dad wouldn't like you contacting me. He needs to know you still care. He thinks you hate him. I don't hate him. I just can't be with someone who runs away when things get hard. He's not running anymore. He's just stuck. Like when I get scared in the dark and can't move even though I know the light switch is right there. The metaphor was so perfect, so painfully accurate that Clara had to close her eyes. What do you want me to do, Emma? Come for Thanksgiving, please. It's next week, just dinner. You don't have to stay long, but maybe if he sees you, he'll remember how to not be stuck anymore. This was a terrible idea. Spectacularly bad. Clara had worked so hard to move on, to build walls of her own, to protect herself and her baby from more heartbreak. I'll think about it, she typed, because she couldn't say no to a 6-year-old who just wanted her dad to be happy. Thank you. And Clara? I'm excited to meet my little brother or sister, even if grown-ups are being dumb about it. Clara laughed despite herself. It's a girl. You're getting a sister. Really? That's so cool. I'm going to teach her everything, like how to make dad smile and which cookies he pretends not to eat but totally does. You should probably delete these messages now. Already done. See you Thursday, 6 p.m. Dad always does turkey at 6. The messages disappeared from the thread, leaving no trace Emma had ever contacted her. Clara sat there for a long time, hand on her belly, where the baby was doing gymnastics. A girl. She was having a girl, and that girl was going to have a half-sister who was already planning their relationship. Clara had been so focused on protecting herself that she'd forgotten something important. This baby deserved to know her father, deserved to know Emma, deserved a chance at a family, even if that family was complicated and messy and broken in places. The question was whether Clara was brave enough to try again. She thought about it for 3 days, argued with herself, called Sarah, who said, "What do you have to lose at this point? You already lost him. Maybe it's time to see if there's anything left to find." On Wednesday night, Clara texted the number Emma had used. "I'll come to Thanksgiving, just dinner, no promises beyond that." The response was immediate, but this time it was Adrian's number, his real number. Emma told me what she did. I didn't ask her to contact you, but I'm grateful she did. 6 p.m. Thursday. I'll send a car. I can drive myself. Clara, let me do this one thing, please. She stared at the please. It was such a small word, but from Adrian, it meant everything. Fine. 6 p.m. Thanksgiving arrived cold and gray, threatening snow. Clara dressed carefully in the one maternity dress that made her feel halfway human, did her makeup for the first time in weeks, and tried not to throw up from nerves. The car arrived exactly at 5:30. The driver was polite and professional, and Clara spent the whole ride wondering what she was doing. This was insane. She should turn around. Adrian had hurt her. She'd moved on. This was just going to reopen wounds that had barely started healing. But Emma's words kept echoing in her head. He's stuck, like when I get scared in the dark. The penthouse looked the same, but felt different. Or maybe Clara was different. She stood outside the door, hand raised to knock, heart pounding. The door opened before she could. Emma stood there in a dress with a pilgrim on it, grinning like Christmas had come early. "You came! I told Dad you would, but he didn't believe me." "Emma, let her in. It's cold." Adrian's voice from inside, tight with tension. Emma grabbed Clara's hand and pulled her inside. The apartment smelled like turkey and pie and something else. Candles, maybe. The table was set for 3, which made Clara's throat tight. Adrian stood in the kitchen, wearing jeans and a sweater that made him look younger, more approachable. His eyes went straight to her belly, then to her face, and Clara saw everything there: love, regret, hope, fear. "Hi," he said quietly. "Hi." Emma looked between them, rolled her eyes in a gesture far too mature for 6. "Okay, this is painful. I'm going to watch TV while you two figure out how to talk like normal people." She disappeared into the living room, leaving them alone. The silence stretched. "You look beautiful," Adrian finally said. "I look 7 months pregnant and exhausted." "Beautiful," he repeated firmly. "How are you feeling? The baby, is everything okay?" "We're fine, healthy. Due January 15th. A girl." His voice cracked slightly. "Emma told me. She's over the moon about having a sister. Emma seems to have taken charge of this entire situation. She's terrifyingly good at that. Gets it from me, apparently." Adrian moved closer, not touching, but near enough that Clara could feel the warmth of him. "Thank you for coming. I know you didn't want to." Emma asked. I couldn't say no to her. And if I had asked? Clara met his eyes. I would have said no. "I'm here for her, not for you." The words landed like a slap. Adrian nodded, accepting them. "Fair. Can we at least eat? I made enough food for 10 people because I was nervous, and stress cooking is apparently my new thing." Dinner was awkward at first. Emma filled the silences with chatter about school and her friends and the new book she was reading. Clara answered when spoken to, hyper-aware of Adrian's presence across the table, the way his eyes kept drifting to her. "Dad burned the rolls," Emma announced cheerfully. "He never burns things. But today he burned the rolls and forgot to put sugar in the pie." "Emma," Adrian warned. "What? It's true, you've been a mess." Emma turned to Clara. "He's been a mess since you left. Forgets things. Works all the time. Won't smile. It's very annoying." "That's enough," Adrian said, but there was no heat in it. Clara took pity on him. "The turkey is good. Thanks. It's the one thing I didn't ruin." After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Clara her room. Pink walls covered in drawings, a bookshelf overflowing, a small desk where she did homework. It was chaotic and beautiful and so clearly loved. "This will be the baby's room when she visits," Emma said matter-of-factly. "We can share. I already made space in my closet for her stuff." Clara's eyes burned. "Emma, honey, I don't know if she's going to visit. She has to. She's my sister." Emma's confidence was unshakable. "And you're going to figure it out with Dad because you love each other, and that's what people who love each other do." "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. You're just making it complicated." Emma flopped on her bed. "My mom left because she didn't love Dad enough to stay. But you do. I can tell. You're just scared he'll hurt you again." The observation was so accurate it stole Clara's breath. "How are you so smart?" "I pay attention, and I read a lot." Emma sat up. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Sure." "I used to think it was my fault she left. My mom. Like if I had been better, or cuter, or less work, she would have stayed." Clara's heart broke. "Oh, sweetie, no. But Dad told me some people aren't built for staying, that it wasn't about me being good enough. It was about her not being strong enough." Emma picked at her bedspread. "I think that's true about Dad, too. Not that he's not strong, but that he's scared of not being good enough. So he leaves first before you can leave him." Clara sat down next to Emma, overwhelmed by this tiny human's emotional intelligence. "That's very wise." "I know. So are you going to give him another chance or not? Because he really loves you, and the baby needs a dad. And I need you to not be sad anymore because it makes me sad." Before Clara could answer, Adrian appeared in the doorway. "Emma, bed, it's late. We're talking, girl stuff. Now please." Emma sighed dramatically, but hugged Clara tight. "Think about what I said," she whispered. After Emma was settled, Adrian led Clara to the terrace. The same terrace where they'd first kissed, a lifetime ago. The city glittered below, indifferent as always. "I'm sorry," Adrian said without preamble. "For everything. For running. For that letter. For not being there when you found out about the baby. For every moment of pain I caused because I was too afraid to be brave." Clara wrapped her arms around herself against the cold. "I heard all this before, Adrian, in your office. Sorry doesn't fix anything." "I know. That's why I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for another chance. I'm just asking you to listen." "Okay, I'm listening." Adrian leaned against the railing, and in the dim light, Clara saw how much the last months had cost him. The shadows under his eyes, the new lines around his mouth, the weight he'd lost. "After you left, I convinced myself I'd made the right choice. That I was protecting you from inevitable disaster, that you'd be better off without me." He laughed bitterly. "I was so good at lying to myself, built a whole narrative where I was the hero for letting you go. Adrian, then Emma asked me why I was sad all the time, asked if I missed you, and I tried to explain that sometimes grown-ups make hard choices for good reasons. You know what she said?" "What?" "She said, 'That sounds like a stupid reason. If you love someone, you fight for them. You don't give up because you're scared.'" Adrian's voice cracked. 6 years old, and she's braver than I've ever been. Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She's an amazing kid. She is. And she deserves better than a father who models cowardice. Just like our daughter deserves better than a father who runs away when things get hard. He turned to face Clara fully. "I can't promise I won't be scared. I can't promise I won't have moments of panic or doubt. But I promise I won't run again. I promise I'll fight through the fear instead of letting it win." "How do I trust that? How do I believe you this time when you've already proven what you'll do when you're scared?" "You don't, not right away. I have to earn it back." Adrian moved closer. "So here's what I'm proposing. Let me be there for the pregnancy. Doctor's appointments, childbirth classes, middle-of-the-night cravings. Not as your boyfriend, not as anything except the father of your child trying to show up. And after she's born, we figure out co-parenting. Get good at that first. Build trust slowly. And maybe, if I can prove I'm capable of staying, we can talk about us again." Clara wanted to say no. Wanted to protect herself, maintain her walls, stay safe. But safe was lonely. Safe was raising her daughter alone. Safe was denying her baby a father who, for all his flaws, genuinely wanted to try. "No promises," Clara said finally. "You show up, you do the work, you prove you can handle the hard stuff. But I'm not waiting around hoping you'll change. I have a life now, a book coming out, plans that don't include you. You want back in? You have to fit into my life, not the other way around." "Deal. When's your next appointment?" "Next Tuesday, 2 p.m. I'll be there." Adrian pulled out his phone, typed something. "What else? Childbirth class? Wednesdays at 7. But I already registered alone." "Unregister. We'll do it together. What about the book? When does it publish?" Clara hesitated. 2 weeks. It's about us." Adrian's head snapped up. "What?" "I wrote about everything. The voice message, Seattle, the pregnancy, you leaving, changed the names, fictionalized some details, but it's our story. My story. I'm not apologizing for it." He was quiet for a long moment. Clara braced for anger, accusations, demands that she pull it. "Can I read it?" he asked instead. "You want to read a book about what an emotionally unavailable coward you were?" "Yes, because it's your truth, and I need to understand how badly I hurt you if I'm going to do better." Clara pulled out her phone, sent him the PDF her editor had given her. "Don't say I didn't warn you." They stood in silence, the city sprawling below them, the baby doing somersaults inside Clara. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even reconciliation. But it was a start. "I should go," Clara said finally. "It's late, and I'm exhausted all the time these days." "Let me drive you home." "You have Emma?" "I'll wake her up, or we'll all go. She'd probably love it." Adrian's smile was tentative. "I want to see where you live, where our daughter is going to live." Clara almost said no. But she thought about Emma's words, about fighting instead of giving up. "Okay, let's go." The drive to Clara's apartment was an adventure. Emma was delighted to be woken up for a midnight car ride, even though it was barely 9 p.m. She chattered the whole way, asking Clara questions about the baby, about her new apartment, about whether she had any good books. When they pulled up to Clara's building, old, slightly run down, in a neighborhood that was safe but not fancy, Adrian's expression went carefully neutral. "This is nice," he said, lying badly. "It's cheap and the landlord doesn't ask too many questions. Nice is not the word I'd use." "Can we see inside?" Emma was already unbuckling. "Please." Clara's apartment looked exactly like what it was. A home built on a tight budget and hope. Secondhand furniture, DIY nursery decorating, walls that needed paint. But it was clean and warm and hers. Emma ran straight to the nursery. "Oh, you painted clouds. And are those stars? This is so pretty." Adrian stood in the doorway, taking it all in. The crib Clara had assembled herself. The mobile she'd found at a thrift store. The rocking chair that squeaked but was comfortable. The pile of baby clothes, washed and folded, waiting. "You did all this alone," he said quietly. "I had help. Sarah came over a lot. My neighbor downstairs is a carpenter and fixed the crib when I put it together wrong." "I should have been here." "Yes, you should have." Clara didn't soften it. "But you weren't, so I managed." Emma was going through the baby clothes, exclaiming over tiny socks and onesies. "Dad, look at this one. It has a dinosaur." Adrian picked up a onesie that said, "Loved beyond measure," and something in his face broke. "Clara, I'm so sorry for all of it, for making you do this alone, for not being here to paint clouds and build cribs and buy dinosaur onesies. I know you are, but sorry doesn't change the past. It only changes what you do next." He nodded, setting the onesie down carefully like it was precious. "What can I do?" "Now. What do you need?" Clara thought about it, about all the nights she'd been too exhausted to cook, about the baby furniture still in boxes because it required 2 people to assemble, about the loneliness of doing this without a partner. The changing table is still in pieces. The instructions are in Swedish and make no sense. If you actually want to help, you could stay and figure it out. Adrian's face lit up. "Yes, absolutely. Where are the pieces?" They spent the next 2 hours assembling baby furniture while Emma helped by reading the Swedish instructions in a silly accent that made them all laugh. Adrian was surprisingly good at it, methodical and patient, only swearing twice when things didn't fit right. Clara sat in the rocking chair and watched them work. Adrian in his expensive sweater getting dust on his knees, Emma handing him tools and chattering about her sister, the 2 of them creating something together. Felt like family. Broken and complicated and far from perfect, but family nonetheless. At 11 p.m., Emma fell asleep on Clara's couch, clutching a stuffed giraffe. Adrian carried her to the car, then came back up. "Thank you," he said at the door. "For tonight. For letting me be here. Tuesday, 2 p.m., don't be late." "I won't." "And Clara, I'm reading your book tonight. All of it. I want to understand." He left and Clara closed the door, leaning against it. Her apartment felt different now. Less lonely. Like maybe, possibly, there was room for hope after all. True to his word, Adrian showed up Tuesday at 1:45 p.m. He sat through the appointment, asked the doctor questions, held Clara's hand when they did the ultrasound, and saw their daughter moving on the screen. "She has your nose," he whispered, staring at the image. "You can't tell that from an ultrasound." "I can. Look at that profile." The doctor printed out pictures. Adrian took 3 copies, one for him, one for Emma, one for Clara's refrigerator. After in the parking lot, Adrian pulled Clara aside. "I read it. The book." Clara's stomach dropped. And it's brilliant, devastating, honest in ways that made me want to throw up, but brilliant. His eyes were red-rimmed like he'd been crying. "You made me see what I did to you, really see it. Not the sanitized version I told myself, the real damage. Adrian, I was a villain in our story. Not the hero protecting you from himself, just a scared man hurting someone he loved because it felt safer than being vulnerable." He took her hand. "I'm sorry. Not just for what I did, but for making you carry all of it alone. The fear, the pregnancy, the heartbreak. You deserved better. You deserve better." Clara squeezed his hand. "Then be better. Show up. Do the work." "I will. I am." And he did. Over the next 2 months, Adrian showed up for everything, every appointment, every childbirth class, where he practiced breathing techniques and looked ridiculous with a fake belly strapped on. Every midnight craving run, including the time Clara needed pickles and ice cream at 2 a.m., and he drove to 3 different stores to find the right brands. He fixed things in her apartment without being asked, installed a carbon monoxide detector, replaced the locks when she mentioned they stuck, brought groceries when he noticed her fridge was empty. He introduced Clara to Emma properly, not as Dad's friend, but as your little sister's mom, who is very important to our family. Emma embraced the concept with the enthusiasm only a 6-year-old could manage, insisting on reading baby books to Clara's stomach and teaching the baby songs. And slowly, painfully slowly, Clara's walls started coming down. The book launched in December. It was a modest success at first, then went viral when a popular book reviewer called it the most honest depiction of modern love and power dynamics I've ever read. Sales skyrocketed. Clara did interviews, podcasts, even a local TV spot. Adrian watched from the sidelines, proud and slightly awed. "You're famous," he said after one particularly popular podcast. "I'm book famous. That's like regular famous's nerdy cousin." "You're incredible. I always knew you were, but now the world knows too." Clara felt something shift then. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close. Acceptance, maybe, of what they'd been, what they'd survived, what they might become. On January 14th, one day before her due date, Clara went into labor at 3 a.m. She called Adrian, hands shaking, and he was at her apartment in 12 minutes flat. Okay, we've got this. We practiced this." Adrian was trying to sound calm and failing spectacularly. "Breathing. You're doing the breathing, right?" "I'm breathing. Are you breathing? You look like you might pass out." "I'm fine, totally fine." He grabbed her hospital bag, which they'd packed together 2 weeks ago. "Car. We need the car." The drive to the hospital was a blur. Adrian held her hand through contractions, called the doctor, texted Sarah, and somehow managed to hit every red light in the city. "If you make me give birth in your car, I'm never forgiving you," Clara panted between contractions. "Not helping. You're not helping." But he was smiling despite the panic in his eyes. They made it to the hospital. Barely. Clara was already 6 centimeters dilated. The next 14 hours were the longest of Clara's life. Adrian stayed through all of it, held her hand until she thought she might break his fingers, let her yell at him when the pain got bad, wiped her forehead with cool cloths, told her she was strong and brave and doing amazing. At 5:47 p.m. on January 14th, their daughter came into the world screaming her tiny lungs out. "She's here," the doctor said, placing the baby on Clara's chest. "Perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, healthy as can be." Clara looked down at the tiny, furious face and felt her entire world realign. This was what mattered, not the heartbreak, not the fear, not the mistakes. This perfect, impossible human they'd created. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." Adrian was crying openly, one hand on Clara's shoulder, the other gently touching the baby's head. "She's beautiful. She's so beautiful." "Want to cut the cord, Dad?" the nurse offered. Adrian looked at Clara for permission. She nodded. After, when the baby was cleaned and swaddled and the room had quieted, the nurse brought her back. "Have we decided on a name?" Clara and Adrian hadn't discussed names. They'd both been too superstitious, too afraid to plan that far ahead. "What do you think?" Clara asked softly, looking at Adrian. He studied the baby's face, her tiny nose, her rosebud mouth, the shock of dark hair. "Grace," he said finally. "Because she's the Grace we didn't deserve but got anyway." Clara's eyes filled. "Grace Bennett Vale?" Perfect. They sat together in the hospital room, Grace sleeping between them, and for the first time in almost a year, Clara felt complete. The door opened and Emma burst in, Margaret trailing apologetically behind. "I tried to make her wait," Margaret said, but she was very insistent. Emma rushed to the bedside, eyes huge. "Is that her? Is that my sister?" "This is Grace," Adrian said, lifting the baby carefully. "Want to hold her?" Emma nodded solemnly. Adrian helped her sit in the chair, positioned Grace in her arms, and stepped back. Clara watched Emma stare down at Grace with wonder and love and fierce protection already written across her face. "Hi, Grace. I'm Emma. I'm your big sister, and I'm going to teach you everything, like how to make Dad laugh and where Mom hides the good cookies and how to read." And she looked up at Adrian, then at Clara. "She's ours, right? Like a real family? Adrian looked at Clara. The question in his eyes was clear. Are we? Can we be? Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here. The voice message that started everything. The Seattle trip where they'd first been brave. The pregnancy that had torn them apart. The months of slowly rebuilding trust. The night Grace came into the world and changed everything. They'd been broken, both of them. Damaged by their pasts, terrified of their futures. But maybe that was okay. Maybe you didn't need to be whole to build something real. Maybe you just needed to be willing to try. Yeah, Claire said, meeting Adrian's eyes. We're a real family. Adrian crossed the room and kissed her. It was soft and careful, and tasted like salt from the tears they'd both shed. It was nothing like their first kiss on the terrace. It was better, because it came with history, with hurt overcome, with choice made again and again to stay, to fight, to love despite the fear. I love you, he whispered against her lips. I love you, and I'm not running anymore. Good, because we're kind of stuck with you now. Clara gestured to Grace, to Emma, to the family they'd accidentally created from chaos and mistakes. This is what you fought for. Better not mess it up. I won't, or I'll try not to. And when I do mess up, because I will, I'll fix it. No more running, no more hiding. I'm holding you to that. I know. I'm counting on it. They brought Grace home 3 days later to Claire's apartment, which now had a crib that didn't squeak, and a changing table assembled correctly, and evidence of Adrian's presence everywhere. His jacket on the hook, his laptop on the counter, his toothbrush in the bathroom. He'd been staying there since the birth, helping with night feedings and diaper changes, learning how to swaddle and burp and soothe. Emma visited every day after school, reading to Grace and helping however a 6-year-old could help with a newborn. It was chaotic and exhausting, and nothing like Clara had imagined when she first took that pregnancy test alone in the office bathroom. It was better. 1 month after Grace's birth, on a Tuesday evening when Emma was at a friend's house and Grace was actually sleeping, Adrian found Clara in the nursery. She was standing over the crib just watching their daughter breathe. She's okay, Adrian said softly. She's breathing. You can stop checking. I know. I just like looking at her. He wrapped his arms around Clara from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Move in with me, you and Grace. Move into the penthouse. There's room for everyone. A real nursery. Space for your writing. No more worrying about rent or leaky faucets or neighbors who play music too loud at 2 a.m. Clara had been expecting this. Dreading it, maybe. I like my apartment. Your apartment is too small and the heating barely works. It's mine. I built this life by myself. I'm not giving it up just because things are easier with you. Adrian was quiet for a moment. Okay, then I'll move here. Clara turned in his arms. What? I'll move here. We'll make it work. Get a bigger place in this building, maybe. Or a house nearby. Something that's ours together, not mine that you move into. Ours that we choose. Adrian, you live in a penthouse. You have a doorman. This building has roaches. I don't care about the penthouse. I care about you. About us. About building a life that works for everyone, not just me. His hands cupped her face. I'm done making unilateral decisions. We're partners, equals. What do you want? Clara thought about it, really thought about it. I want space to write. A real office, not a corner of the living room. I want Grace to have a yard someday. I want Emma to have her own room when she stays with us. I want to not worry about money all the time, but also not feel like I'm living in your world instead of ours. Then that's what we'll build together. We'll find a house, not too big, with a yard and an office and room for all of us. We'll split everything 50-50. Make it truly ours. That's going to be expensive. Your book royalties are doing pretty well from what I hear, and I have some savings. He smiled. Between us, I think we can manage. Clara kissed him, long and slow and full of promise. Okay, let's build something together. Something that's ours. They found a house in March. 4 bedrooms, a backyard, space for Clara to write, and Adrian to occasionally work from home. Not in the fancy part of town, but safe and comfortable in theirs. The book continued selling well. Clara started writing a second one. Adrian scaled back his hours at Vale Industries, promoting someone else to handle the day-to-day so he could be present for Grace's milestones, for Emma's school events, for the quiet Tuesday nights that made up real life. They fought sometimes. Adrian's control issues didn't disappear overnight. Clara's walls came back up when she felt vulnerable. But they'd learned how to fight fair, how to apologize with actions, not just words, how to choose each other even when it was hard. On a Saturday in June, 6 months after Grace's birth, they had a small ceremony in their backyard. Not a wedding, neither of them was ready for that level of commitment yet, but a celebration, of family, of choosing to stay, of the messy, imperfect, absolutely real life they'd built together. Sarah was there, and Margaret, and a handful of close friends. Emma wore a dress she'd picked out herself and carried Grace during the short ceremony. Claire and Adrian exchanged promises. Not vows, just honest acknowledgments of what they were committing to. "I promise to stay even when I'm scared," Adrian said, holding Claire's hands. "I promise to fight for us instead of running from us. I promise to be the partner and father you both deserve, even when I don't feel worthy of either role. I promise to let you in, even when it's easier to push you away," Clara said. "I promise to believe in us, even when my past tells me not to. I promise to build this life with you, not despite our brokenness, but because of it. Because we know what it's like to hurt, and we're choosing to heal together." They kissed while Emma cheered and Grace gurgled, and their small circle of loved ones celebrated two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way and refused to let fear win. Later, after the party ended and the house quieted, Clara sat in the nursery with Grace, Adrian beside her, Emma asleep in her room down the hall. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." Did what? Built something real, something lasting, something worth all the pain it took to get here. Adrian kissed the top of her head. "Best thing I ever did was not fire you for that voice message." Clara laughed. "Best thing I ever did was accidentally send it." "Think it was actually an accident?" "What do you mean?" "Maybe some part of you knew I needed someone to call me out, knew you needed someone to see you. Maybe the universe made you click that button on purpose." That's very philosophical for a man who runs on data and logic. I've learned that some things can't be explained by spreadsheets, like love and family, and why a voice message calling me a refrigerator turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Clara settled back against his chest, watching Grace sleep, feeling the steady beat of Adrian's heart beneath her ear. They weren't perfect. They'd never be perfect. Adrian would always struggle with control and fear. Clara would always have walls that went up when she felt threatened. They'd have hard days and fights and moments where they both wanted to run, but they'd also have this. Quiet Saturday nights in a house they'd chosen together. A daughter who was half him, half her, all theirs. A stepdaughter who'd fought for them before they knew how to fight for themselves. A love that had survived every reason to fail and emerged stronger for it. That voice message had been a mistake, the best mistake Clara had ever made. And from that mistake, they'd built something true, something lasting, something that proved that even the messiest beginnings could lead to beautiful endings. Not perfect endings, just honest ones, which, Clara had learned, were the only kind worth having.